We talk a lot about leadership, but presence, that's where the real work happens.
Hi, and thanks for joining us for this episode of the Mission Forward podcast. You are joining us at the tail end of our very special 11th season, in which we've been exploring hellos, goodbyes, and what to do with that space between. For those new here, we have been at this podcasting thing since 2020, and we are so proud to have featured people from all over the world who are committed to moving missions forward in smart and creative ways. These are the people who admire me, and I have loved to share their insights and intentional leadership with you. Today's guest is no exception. In fact, today's guest sits atop my list of most intentional leaders. Dr. DeRionne Pollard is currently the president of the American Association of Community College, a new role that she has just moved into. And most recently, she was the president of Nevada State University. But first, I crossed paths with her back around 2010 when she was president of Montgomery College. And not just crossed paths, but I had a chance to learn from her in that role and to watch her in that role and to see the shared commitment that she and I both had to moving missions forward. She did it with such grace and such leadership. And there was so much I could just feel I was learning from her simply by being in her presence. Dr. Pollard's wisdom and grace and steadfast commitment to student success is something that has always inspired me. So, Dr. Pollard, knowing it is a very busy time as you are just coming into your new role, I am delighted to have you here on Mission Forward. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Carrie. Your introduction is so generous and gracious. Let me just return it by saying, when I think about the people who I choose to spend my time with, you are one of those. I learn every time I'm with you, and the way in which you carry yourself and choose to show up is something that is both admirable and inspirational. So thank you for inviting me to be here today.
Thank you. Well, we've got a good conversation ahead because I've been watching you. I've been watching these incredible messages that you've shared with your community from that moment you decided to leave and announce leaving Nevada State. And then an editorial that was written about you that I'll read a little excerpt from that was just so beautiful. And then more recently, how you decided to announce your showing up at this new incredible job, and more than a job, really. I mean, it's a calling, it seems like, as I listen to you all. But I wonder if you just start a bit by bringing me to where you are. What has this last year of transitions, moving from goodbyes to hellos, been like for you?
You know, it's interesting. My mother died when I was very young, when I was 4. So I've always had this kind of intensity around how do I want to be remembered, and how do I want to live a life so that I am remembered when I'm no longer in this space. So as a result of that, I've always been drawn to mission forward organizations, and have really used that as a way of helping me, I think, make sense of my own issues. I think my work becomes my therapy in a lot of ways. And for a lot of us, I'm sure that we do that. So for me, this moment of transition was this last year. Really, I think it was a defining one. I have a birthday coming up this week, and I'll be 55. And I think about, realistically, hopefully, if I've planned this well, this next decade of 10 years is going to be the last part of my working formal life. So I thought about what are the ways in which I want to show up most deliberately for that. I had a phenomenal job at Nevada State, a state that is really still defining what it's going to be when it grows up, and trying to define this relationship with higher education. So I got to do that for a fairly new state university. And then in the midst of that, I got a call about this job. And I had several colleagues and friends from across the nation who knew that for 20 some odd years, I'd been in community colleges and loved that work. That mission, it saved me, in a lot of ways. And I went into the 4-year space to kind of see what was there. And I had this institution that I fell in love with. But there's always been this calling, this yearning, to bring me back into the community college space, because I understand this mission is profound for me. So as a result of that, when the position became open, I thought, as you just said, where can I give the most impact? Where can I show up most authentically? Where can I be where I think my skills, talents, and experiences may be most useful, and where I still have time to grow and space to grow. So that's what this is. Our son, my wife and I have an 18-year-old who was going off to college. So I knew that if I took this role on, I'd have an inordinate amount of time to focus on this work. And it's been glorious in the 30 days that I've had on the job thus far.
That's great. So let's actually look at, I'm going to read a short piece of an editorial that the editorial board at the Las Vegas Sun wrote when you announced your departure. And they said, as she embarks on this next chapter, we reflect not just on what she has accomplished, but how she has pursued those accomplishments with empathy, courage, and an unwavering belief in the transformative power of education. Nevada State University is stronger for her leadership. The state is better for her service. And soon, community colleges across the country will benefit from the same visionary stewardship.
I couldn't believe it. My eyes just welled up again hearing that because I didn't have any idea that it would be observed or recognized. You just kind of go in and you do the work. And I knew that there were a number of the folks in the state who were very congratulatory about the transition. And I also wanted to be very thoughtful about how I announced it when I would be leaving, not have that long goodbye. So, I just kind of thought I was going to kind of ease on out the way. And I saw that, as a matter of fact, I hadn't even seen the editorial. One of my colleagues and friends forwarded to me and said, "Did you see the paper this morning?" And I said, "No, I haven't seen the paper yet. I'm just getting out of bed." And I read that editorial and literally just broke down crying because if you think back to even just that first part of what I just said, the idea of, for me, it's not always the work you do, but how you do it. And what I loved about that editorial was unsolicited. I didn't know, to this day, I don't know who wrote it. I know the editorial board did it. I don't know what made them do it, but one of my friends said to me, "You made them do it." And how you chose to show up and do the work, how you tried to leave it better. And more importantly, I think that people in the state felt your commitment to the mission of higher education. So I hope that when it's all said and done, that is the type of impact that I'm remembered for.
Dr. Pollard, you have something in you that is so greater than you. You have this incredible ability to think beyond the moment that you are in and to think about the context and the environment that you are within. And we even said before we started recording this is thinking about what we leave behind. And as you think about your birthday coming up, what you leave behind, where do you find that center? Because I think a lot of us want that, right? We want to say, how do I make the most of the short time I have here? And then there's life. And that life just pulls us in so many directions. And it's hard to feel like we can stay focused on that thing that is so much bigger than us. How do you do it?
I think you have to do the work. And this is, I think, a really interesting notion to me. I would never forget one of a mentor of mine. I think when I finished my doctorate, he gave me this book. It was some, postmodern self-help type of book. And he knew I was I'm the kid that collects them. In fact, my wife puts me on quote unquote Amazon punishment every once in a while because I just buy books and they're stacked up on the side of the bed. And I may never read them, but I feel better because I'm surrounded by them. And I remember he wrote in there, "You need a self-help book less than anybody I know." He said, "Because you're always trying to do the work of making yourself better." And I think that to me is what grounds it. I spend probably too much time, to be quite frank, Carrie, thinking about how do I make an impact? And I really believe it comes. I read this book a long time ago from Motherless Daughters, and it talks a little bit about the age you are when your mother leaves this earth, how that impacts your trajectory as an adult. And there's this phase, I think in the group, like 4 to 6. I was 4, my mother passed. And there is this kind of tragic um, desire to always know what if, because you aren't able, you don't have that reflection in front of you when you're constantly in your life journey. So I know for me that it took me a long time to do the work, a lot of good therapy, a lot of good reading, a lot of good journaling, always writing, at the same time, and to be a reflection of all of the leaders that I had in my life. I grew up on the south side of Chicago, as you know, and I had phenomenal mentors and sponsors and folks community means a lot. When I introduce myself, I always talk about being this little Black girl from the South Side of Chicago. And contrary to what is oftentimes portrayed right now in contemporary media about Chicago, these close knit communities were intentional. I remember when Precious across the street, her grandmother died, and her whole front porch was covered in Tupperware with names on it because everybody wanted their Tupperware back. But you would put that on it because we wanted to feed the family. Or when Melba and I were walking home from school one day and she didn't have gloves, and I gave her my gloves, and I came home and told my dad, and my father was like, "Oh, yeah," because I always lost my gloves at least, but I'd had a good reason this time why I didn't have them. And he said, "Baby, if you're always giving your gloves to somebody else, then that's okay if you need more." And we would go and get some more. So those are the types of things, those people and those experiences profoundly shaped me. And then I understood the purpose, which is why I love your newsletter. You know, we're crazy, but I keep it, I have it flagged. So when it comes in, these mission moments, when you talk about the intentionality of, of the intersection of the personal, the professional, and the community, that's really what it is. So I always wanted to work and live in a space where those intersections I could get to amplify, magnify, to make it better for the next person. And that's what I've been able to do, I think, in the work that I've engaged in, whatever state or institution I've been at.
Your story of losing your mom was part of your welcome, part of your introduction to your new role. And you talked about how being a young girl, you remember, I think, walking through through the hallways of a community college.
I tell people all the time that it is providence that I would have worked in community colleges for 20 some years, because really my earliest memory, literally the earliest memory I have, is clapping cymbals at Kennedy King College. And I was doing that. Couldn't have been any more than two and a half, three, but I remember that thinking, this is the best thing since sliced bread. I'm clapping cymbals and I'm standing here with my friends doing that. And I looked forward to going to my school every week, where my mother was taking classes there to become a library technician. And then on the other end of that, probably 4 years later after she passed, not even four, because I was probably six, so maybe 2 years later, my aunt, who was helping my father care for my sister and I, she decided that she wanted to run an in-home childcare center because she had us, and her four older daughters were out and about. So she thought, I can help other folks. So we were living in the projects of subsidized housing where a lot of folks were working, and she could help take care of their kids. So what did she want to go do? In the state of Illinois, you have to go get licensed by your community college. And I remember sitting in the hallway, my sister and I, and there would be these glass panes in the door, and there would be a bench right outside that glass pane, and we could not leave that bench. We had to sit there on that bench, and my aunt and a couple of her daughters would be in there. They were working to get their certification. But Carrie, I sat there and I thought, this is a college. I love school at that moment, and it has never changed. So it is, I think, whatever divine aspirations or beliefs you have, it is not lost on me that the work that I do now on behalf of the nation's community colleges comes because I had those intersecting moments as a child, and it has influenced me consciously and unconsciously since that time.
I imagine, one, thinking about coming into this job was such an exciting opportunity to be able to think about broadly all of community colleges across the US. And at the same moment, was it sad to be thinking about leaving a campus? You're not on a campus anymore, right? And so I'm curious I imagine there will be plenty of opportunities for you to be on campuses, but that connection to being inside the place, to seeing the students, feels so important to a role like this.
I completely agree with you. And it's actually one of the things that I have kind of put in my own professional development plan, how to be on a campus at least once a month, because there is a rhythm to a college campus. There is a community. And to be quite frank, one of the critiques I often have of those of us who move into leadership roles is that we oftentimes forget what things look like in the field up front. And this idea, when I was at Montgomery College in Nevada State, whenever I was having a bad day or a bad moment, I would literally go on campus and walk around. And I had a couple of things that was purposeful. And that obviously we know physical movement helps move endorphins and all those things. But I got to see the mission up front and up close. And I got to hug a student. I got to watch a faculty member deliver a phenomenal teaching. I got to see a community member trying to navigate the campus and I could maybe help them. I love watching students who brought their children on campus, and the first day of class is always the best because you see them all together and you could see these little people thinking about this is my campus, or stop by the child care center on the campus. So all of those things were a part of the work. Or when I'm really good and quiet, I can just go sit and observe. And I think listening, I believe, is my deepest competency. Listening comes from a place of observing. And if you can observe people without thinking about yourself, it makes you do the work more intentionally. So my greatest concern, as you talk about right now, is not being on the campus and being in spaces where I'm talking with elected officials, other influencers, and we're talking about the work, but we're not talking of the work. And that's the thing that I have to fight to protect and ground myself. And fortunately, I have lots of good friends, and they will remind me, Darian, you're sounding, I'm sure they'll tell me, you're sounding like DC right now. You're not sounding like the campus. So I'm going to keep that in mind each and every day when I try to do the work.
That's a great lesson for everyone to hear. Go back and rewind 30 seconds and listen to that again. That's an important lesson on being grounded in mission. Tell us a bit about the mission that you're carrying forward now.
This mission of community colleges, I think, is the most profound thing. It's the most clear representation of the American dream. Here's this notion that almost 100 years ago, we were founded, the first one, Joliet Community College. And then when you look at the Truman Commission, they actually called for the network of community colleges to be created. So this was in 1947. And this commission came forth and said, we're in a period where we have profound national identity issues. We have an underemployment of an underskilled workforce and education. We don't have a very clear understanding of how we will segregate or even move different levels of education in this country. We have national strife, we have identity issues, all of those things. And the president and the federal government said for the first time, we're going to actually articulate a mission for higher education in this country. And from that, there was a call to create this network of institutions that are locally based that help the returning veteran and the working reservist, that helps the stay-at-home dad and the working mom. It's for the new 18-year-old who's graduated from high school and the returning adult who's trying to figure out what their next or second, third, or fourth career is going to be. It's for the highly gifted and talented student, and it's for the student who is coming to learn basic English and math. Those are all the spaces, and we want it to be deeply locally connected. And that's what our nation's community colleges are about. We deliver education in the communities of which we're a part, and our success and our wellness as an institution is dependent upon the health and wellness of our community. So here we go, Carrie, it's full circle. For me, it's always back to community. I am a product of powerful communities, and that's what community colleges are. And now I get to advocate for them at the federal level. I get to talk with our decision makers and elected officials about the value proposition. I get to ask for resources to help support that. I get to think about how we bring people through the pipeline to lead these organizations. And if I do it really, really well, AACC actually starts to become invisible, and then we promote our institutions more. So 1,000 community colleges across this country who are members of this association. While I have the pleasure of leading the association, I'm very clear that I work for them. And that's what we're going to be doing, hopefully, while I'm in the seat for the next several years.
I'm sure you've felt this when you've gone through that urgent call to act and to form the organization, that may have well been written today. I mean, the call to act in terms of what we are solving for, the issues that our communities are facing are in some ways exactly the same as what you just outlined for the founding. And I think so often about the challenges facing higher education, particularly. I'm going to think about for a moment just the traditional four-year university is the cost challenges with that, the changing demographics associated with that, the ability to pivot in education to be able to deliver what is needed in the moment. It seems like community colleges can do all of those things. They can meet those moments.
Yes, we can. And the part about this, we just actually on October 1st released a new report called Resilient by Design. And in this report, we actually talk about exactly what you're saying right here. All of the things that we see that are affecting higher education, they're affecting each sector differently. Shifting demography, that's affecting us, changing economic realities, the impact of technology, The business model for all of our organizations has to change. And in this report, we actually encourage our 4-year partners and our 2-year partners and everybody in between to actually become resilient by design and think deeply about how we do this work. So we're asking our influencers to be actively engaged with this work. We're asking philanthropy to be engaged with us. It is indeed, as you describe, a unique moment for higher education. And community colleges, I believe, are the solution.
Resilient by design. It's another great phrase to hold on to. Applies to both institutions and individuals, the importance of being resilient. All right, we are coming to the end. So I'm going to ask, I've got 2 more things to ask you. And the first one is really about, as you reflect, you haven't even been there all that long yet in this new role that you were just telling us about. But as you reflect on first having said goodbye and then publicly saying hello, what you would share with others who are considering going through a similar moment, right? Maybe they're thinking, is this my time to say goodbye? Is it my time to say hello? What might you share with someone who's questioning that in their own lives?
A couple of things I would say is that one, goodbyes and hellos are constant. You're doing that big and small. And I think for me, when you make the big hellos and the big goodbyes, I think you have to be very intentional about how you did it. So the moment that I announced at Nevada State that I was taking this role, I literally had a whiteboard that sits in my office and I wrote down 7 or 8 things that I wanted to do. And I wanted to be intentional about how I exited. And then I also want to be very intentional about how I entered into the new space. So as you're contemplating, I think anyone, these types of transitions, I'm a planner by nature. And I think the idea of actually being intentionally planful about how you do that work is so important, both for you, but remember that hellos and goodbyes are not just about you. They're about the community of folks who are around you. It's about those who will be acted upon by your acting. It's going to be all of those who are going to be mourning your loss or excited, or some people who are not even sure what to make sense of this transitionary moment for you. So I am of the opinion that being planful, understanding what your compass is and what your skills and your strengths are. I've done the work of to know what I'm good at. I also have done the work to know what I'm not good at and how to then build teams around you to hopefully be successful. And at the end of the day, have some fun at it too. I mean, hellos and goodbyes are oftentimes a lot of tears, a lot of anxiety in your belly and all the things. There should also be joy. And at the end of the day, I knew that when it was time to leave and I was leaving, that I felt at peace for what I had done at Nevada State. Was I excited about the anticipation of what happened at AACC? And did I have joy for both experiences? And that is where I feel right now, like, okay, I'm ready for this. And let's go see how it's going to go.
I love that. And one thing I'll reinforce, I hear from people a lot is, I want to go, but I don't know if I can. And I think there's a few things behind that, right? Will the organization be okay without me? What will I do? Because so much of me is wrapped up in the identity of this organization. And I think what you are such a good reminder of is you led that organization, as we heard in the editorial, so remarkably well. And the organization is okay without you too.
Because it's not about me. And that's the part, the moment we remember it's not about us in these spaces, we do so much better. So I even literally just said this. I saw my former chancellor at a conference last week, and I said, well, when you leave, there's one of 2 things that happen. You're going to either be a villain or a hero. I said, and we all know the truth is somewhere in between. So you have to remember in these moments when you transition out, it is not about you anymore. The moment you make that announcement and when you transition in, it's not going. It'd be about you for a little bit, but then it's about what you do. So I try to stay humble. Humility is really the part of the work.
All right. Last question, or maybe 3, but they're very quick, rapid fire questions. Just a chance to learn more about you. So first, how do you say hello? Is it a hug? Is it a handshake? What's your go-to?
I'm a go-to hugger. I get that energy from other people all the time, but I'm also trying to be respectful that some people don't like to be hugged. And that's also recognized. And if I see somebody stick a hand out first, that lets me know that, okay, DeRionne, shake a hand, or maybe it's just a fist bump. That could be it too.
Nice. Great. And what are your favorite words or language to say hello?
Usually, hey, how you doing? And that's usually how it comes out with, so happy to see you. Thank you for sharing space with me right now. Those are the ways that I do it. And again, it goes back to the hug, but it's the face too. I believe when you can do that, you can convey that I'm fully present in this moment with you. That's the best gift of hello.
Mm-hmm. That's true. What is the one thing you never leave home without?
Well, it depends on who you ask, but I would probably, physically, I'd probably never leave home without my Carmex. I'm obsessed with moisture on my lips. It's the truth.
Good
It's
one.
like I can't stand it when your lips get dry. But I probably say it more emotionally. I never leave home without a clear understanding of who I am in that moment. I really work hard at that. Mindfulness has been a practice that I've been working on for a long time. And if I am fully grounded when I walk out the door that day as to where I'm going, who I am, and what I'm trying to accomplish, it makes my day a lot easier.
Exactly why I said you're top of my list as an intentional leader. All right. Last one. In this great big game of life, what do you hope to leave behind?
So, one of our colleagues, we did leadership in Montgomery, and we asked one of the things you would do is to write your obituary at the end, and that would traumatize me. But I remember at that point writing my tombstone. And what I don't want it to say is phenomenal college president. I don't want it to say that. I wanted to say she was a hell of a girlfriend. She was a dedicated parent. She was a generous lover. She had great laughs. She liked good tequila. She could play a mean game of spades. And at the end of it, Carrie, literally, they could say all the other things about it. At the end, I hope it says that she served through leadership institutions that made a difference. And she made our community better. That's what I wanted to be able to say.
I love that. I was on a show recently and someone asked me that, which is why I'm now asking it to everyone. And my answer was, what I hope I leave behind is that the folks who knew me know that I really loved them.
Oh, you're making me cry. That's it right
and
there.
You're among them. You're among them.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for what a special way to start my day today. And thank you for giving us your wisdom, your generosity, and all the good things you put into this world.
Thank you, Carrie. It was a moment. I adore you, and I'm so glad that I had to have this opportunity to share with you. It is everything.
Yeah, right back at you. And that brings us to the end of this show and this season of Mission Forward. It has been a delight to share this space with you and these episodes with you and these remarkable people with you. Today's episode with Dr. Pollard reminds me why I do this work and why I love absolutely bringing these conversations to you. So while we're going on break, don't you worry, there are more shows coming into the future. But for now, spend some time going back to where we've been, from those hellos to the goodbyes and certainly the space between. And wherever you are going, just keep moving that mission forward. See you soon, friends.